And then what are some best practices? If we just look at the basic science that exists today, what does the peer-reviewed literature tell us about best practices for being strong, healthy, and disease-resistant, and share those with you. Let's dive right in. On our outline, you'll see that our first topic here is hidden benefits. So this is really the whys of strength training. So let's look at the first one, which is injury-resistant body. When we think about strength training, when you do a productive strength workout, you're really training the entire musculoskeletal system. So it's not just about your muscles, but your muscles are the gateway to healthy tendons. That's the gateway to healthy ligaments. That's the gateway to healthy bones and healthy fascia. So the whole musculoskeletal system becomes stronger and more injury resistant when we train it. But the way we do that is by training your muscles. We don't say, what's your name, miss?
Gail.
We don't say, Gail, well, here's the tendon workout, Gail, and I'm going to put Pam over here on the ligament workout. We don't do that. We say, we're going to train your muscles, which give me access to all those other tissues within the musculoskeletal system. So if I want a injury-resistant body, I have to work my muscles. There's no other way to do it. Running alone doesn't make me injury-resistant. Running, as you know, can increase the risk of injuries. And so we want to try to position ourselves to have fewer of those things, and we'll talk about why that makes you a better runner, period. But the first thing to know is I am healthier as a runner when I do strength training properly. Reason number one. Number two is you're faster. Now, how does this happen? Two ways. Number one, when you are stronger, your biomechanics improve. And we call this running economy. If we just do gait analysis and all kinds of other sophisticated measurements on running biomechanics, we see people who have better muscular fitness have better biomechanics. So that means that you're more efficient, you're not wasting time doing things that your body doesn't get a return on. And so we have better biomechanics when our muscular fitness is better, and we also are able to train more consistently. What we're really saying here, this is the big way that strength training improves all sports performance. It reduces downtime and it allows you to stay consistent with the training that we know makes a difference, right? I mean, you guys are here because you know you have to train, right? You can't just show up 6 months from now and do the perfect race the way you want to. You've got to prepare for it, right? That's time. It's also consistency. So anything that helps you to stay with that consistent path, Amanda, allows you to be better because you're doing the training. So we're keeping the training on the rails here. We're not allowing you to have the knee injury, to have the back injury, because that whole musculoskeletal system is stronger, healthier, and injury resistant. Make sense? So it's not about any smoke and mirrors and magic. Suddenly we make you 40% faster. No, you have the same muscle fibers you had to begin with. We're helping you to stay on the training path is what we're helping you to do. So, all right. And then lastly, to the best of my knowledge, and this is a modern day issue, nobody here came to this program and said to Glenn, hey Glenn, by the way, my goal is to develop some sort of chronic illness in the next 6 months. So tell me how your program can help me do that. You didn't come here, did you? You had a goal for yourself, and you wanted to be, at some level, you wanted to be physically and or mentally healthier. And there's a lot of ways we can dice and slice that, but I don't think anyone is here because your goal is to diminish the quality of life, right? You're not here because you want to be worse off 6 months from now. Somehow you want your life to be enriched from this experience. And so you're interested in wellness. I can say that by default. You want to live a happy, healthy life, and this happens to be part of it. Well, it was 2008 that the Department of Health and Human Services here in the United States issued the first ever physical activity guidelines for Americans. How many of you are familiar with the dietary guidelines for Americans? We've had those since 1980. Federal government gets together, tells us what we should eat. Well, we didn't have physical activity guidelines until about 10 years ago or so. 10 years after that, the second edition of those guidelines was updated. The best science we have around how we should exercise to prevent disease. And what stood out in these guidelines was, for the first time in the history of the world, a federal health agency, this is the Department of Health and Human Services, said, hey, all adults should strength train if they want to avoid chronic disease. What are we talking about? Stroke, diabetes, osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, dementia, Alzheimer's, you name it, there's about a dozen diseases linked to muscle loss. And as we age, rate of muscle loss accelerates. So if you're 70 and you've never strength trained, you are substantially weaker than when you were 50. We now know that that muscle loss, Gail, right, is linked to a ton of chronic illness. And so here we can say something that used to only be for athletes, something that used to only be for muscle heads and bodybuilder and strength sports. We can say that all adults should embrace this because it allows them to stay well long term. And so it's no longer something that should be isolated in a small community of guys working out in the basement lifting 5,000 pounds. It's a modern day evidence-based lifestyle medicine, which is the inclusion of resistance exercise to stay strong, healthy, and vibrant as you're aging. So my take-home message here is when we look at the benefits of why we should strength train, yes, better running, fewer injuries, consistent training, you get to do what you want to do and love doing, but at the same time, we have literally every health agency. It's not just the United States now. The World Health Organization, the largest health agency on the planet, says all adults should be strength training long-term as they age if they want to avoid a multitude of chronic diseases. So this is the why behind it, and it's a little more compelling than just kind of getting a PR when you have your next race. So now, having said that, let's look at some of the to-dos and action steps here. The thing about strength training is that it's easy to do it wrong. I mean, you could take a walk, Gail, and yeah, maybe there's a few small mistakes you make because your gait is off or something, or you need better shoes and need to go to Dig Pond, but it's doable to take a walk. But if you start talking about strength training, there are a million variables that can be difficult to implement on. So it's easy to make mistakes with strength training. So today I want to flush through what does the best current science tell us when it comes to some of the best practices for strength training that you can apply to your own workouts and that we would certainly apply at MEDFITNESS as well. So number one, year-round training. Now I talked to Glenn about this a few weeks ago, and understandably Glenn said, hey, share with our group what would be some of the reasons why they'd want to spend time with you in the off season. And so this is a normal, everyday approach to strength training and running. The off season is, I wouldn't say it's the worst time to train, but once we understand how this works, from a strength training standpoint, if you're not strength training, you're losing performance outcomes when you're running. So what we want to say here is that if you started strength training today and you were doing that, you want to figure out how to do it all the time. I'll share a study from 2015 that looked at competitive runners for 5K distances, 3.1 miles, and they split these men into two groups, one that did normal training protocol with running only, the other did running and lower body strength exercises for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks of training, they're able to take 45 seconds off of their best time for their 5K. Now, anyone who does 5Ks knows that 45 seconds is significant, especially for competitive runners. 6 months later, when the group had stopped strength training, they had lost all the benefits. They had lost all the gains that they had from 6 months earlier. And so what I'm saying here is that if you're not strength training is a use it or lose it proposition. It's kind of like a healthy diet. If you're eating healthy today and a year later you're eating terribly and the doctor says, geez, Richard, we need to tighten your diet up here. You got a huge number of risk factors going on. Well, doc, I was eating healthy a year and a half ago. Why doesn't that translate to today? It is a use it or lose it habit. And so what I'm going to suggest to you is that if you're following the best practices, which we would say is twice a week, 2 full body workouts a week, you should intelligently figure out how to train at least 1 day a week during your in-season training, which is when you're competing and doing races and training and so on, so you're not losing what you gained 6 months ago. That adaptation is acute and chronic both. So if you've got a rigorous training schedule, rigorous running schedule, we advise our clients who are runners to do no more than one strength workout a week. So what that basically comes down to is about 20 to 25 minutes of strength training once a week. I guarantee every one of us can integrate 20 to 25 minutes once a week of smart strength training to be a better runner. So we're going to go against the tide here and go against sort of conventional unscientific wisdom that says don't strength train in season. That's a mistake. If you want to be slower, don't strength train in season. If you want to be the best version of yourself, figure out how to do it once a week in season. Okay, so this again, against conventional wisdom here. Progressive overload. What do we want to say about that? This is a mistake that all humans make when they lift weights. They go to the gym or they go into the basement, wherever they lift weights, and they choose a weight and they do it a designated number of times. They say, I'm going to do this 10, 12, 15 times. And then they're done that day, and then they come back 2, 3, 4, 5 days later, and they do the same weight, the same reps, and then they go away, come back 4, 5, 6 days later, same weight, same reps. This is not stimulating your muscular system to adapt or change. And so the essence of strength training is that we have to ask your muscles to do something they can't do. When we do that, they adapt and they compensate. We call this overcompensation. So when I stress Amanda's muscles on an exercise and we're challenging her with a heavier weight, squeezing out as many reps as she's able to safely perform with good form, that stimulates the muscle. If we give her a rest time, the muscles adapt. When she comes back, her muscles are stronger. So we have to be progressive in our approach to strength training. This is how muscles respond. When we stress them, they get stronger and healthier. So we can't just go in and say, oh, I should do 100 pounds 10 times. Good. Repeat it again next week. Repeat it again the week after that. No, you want to continually be progressing. Now, if you know anything about genetics, there's a limit to strength, right? You don't get stronger forever. You would just like speed. You can't get faster every year of your life. There's a cap to your speed. There's a cap to your strength also. But we can get meaningfully stronger and then maintain that strength over time. So eventually you will get to a point where your goal is to maintain the strength and not be losing it as I age, which happens if I'm not strength training. But I want to be progressive and I want to stimulate the muscles and challenge them each time I'm in that workout as a way of getting that compensation, which is the adaptation part of the workout. Different from other training protocols, but this is at the very core of strength. It's why a lot of people don't get benefits from strength training. They don't work hard enough. And we're not here to talk about intensity tonight, but intensity is important. You got to do it safely. We're not talking about risky, dangerous practices, but I have to challenge the muscular system. Only then will it adapt, be stronger, healthier, injury resistant. So we have to be progressive. We have to gradually increase the weights. Now, what about pre-workout stretching and warm-ups? Well, the good news here is that you don't need to do pre-workout stretching for strength training. When we think about stretching in athletics and sports and activities and running and so on, we're generally trying to reduce the risk of injury, typically, with sports. And so when we've defined the proper biomechanics of an exercise for strength training, and you're going in a slow, controlled cadence, managing the speed very carefully, not getting reckless with your form, the risk of injury is almost zero. And so we're not going into a high-risk activity where there's a ton of velocity and a ton of force. So you do not need to do a conventional warm-up if you're strength training, if you're, again, taking an evidence-based approach. If you're going in and just starting cold and throwing heavy weights around very recklessly, then that all bets are off. Anything can happen. We don't advise that type of strength training, but if you're doing an exercise, performing it properly, moving in a controlled fashion, not moving at a high speed, those first 2, 3, 4 warm-ups serve as a warm-up, or 2, 3, 4 reps serve as a warm-up. What are we doing really? We're stretching the muscle through an appropriate safe range of motion. We're increasing the temperature of the muscle. We're drawing blood into that tissue. By the time you're generating maximum force, that joint and that muscle is all warmed up. So again, it seems sacrilegious to say this, But if you're taking an evidence-based approach to strength training, you do not need to do a warm-up. The evidence will bear this out. If you look at the scientific literature, doing a formal warm-up does not make a difference in terms of injury risk reduction when you're doing it properly. Now, do most people do it properly? No. So all bets are off there. But if you're in our environment where you're supervised and we control what you're doing, we're not doing conventional warm-ups. Anyway, Amanda can tell you, she gone through some very hard workouts. Has never had it. How many years have you been training with this, Amanda? 5 years. So has never had any injuries from her strength training. So you can skip the pre-workout warm-up if you know what you're doing. And I'm sorry, stretching. I reversed it, didn't I? I reversed my points. So no pre-workout warm-up. Also, well, you don't have to stretch. You don't have to stretch before, and you don't need to warm up. How's that? Save even more time. Again, why do we not want to stretch when we're strength trained? Because that reduces the muscle's ability to generate force. So if I stretch you out and then I take you through a workout, I'm basically making you weaker for the workout. And this is a workout that hinges on your ability to work hard, stretch yourself, push yourself, fatigue the muscle at a high threshold, and then finish. So I don't want to do anything that's diminishing your strength before I work you out. Just like taking a 1 mile walk before you do a strength workout is going to take a little bit out of your legs. I want you fresh and focused during the workout so you can give me everything you have safely and then move on to that next exercise. So again, we're saying something that's, again, a little counterintuitive and counterculture here. Don't stretch before your strength workout. Don't do a warm-up before your strength workout. But we actually are warming up. So I shouldn't say don't do a warm-up because it's built into the movement pattern when you do it properly. If we look at the literature on this, if we look at the studies that say people that strength train, if they stretch first, they're weaker in the workout. People that do the warm-up first, any injury risk reduction, no change in risk of injury when you're taking that evidence-based approach. And I'm not talking about throwing, medicine balls across the wall and dodging them. So that's a whole different ball game. So now, what about sport-specific training? Again, another misconception when it comes to sports performance. The mindset in our culture is that if let's use running. I was going to take football, but so if someone says, I'm a runner, I'm going to go do a workout, my activities in my strength workout need to model my running. So when you're running, you're standing, right? You're not sitting down. So I think all of my exercises when I'm a runner, training for running, need to be in a standing position. This is a complete train wreck and it's completely unscientific. Why would this not be relevant? Well, because the first thing we have to do, guys, is understand what is the muscle doing? What is the functional purpose of the muscle? What is the biomechanical purpose of the joint? Well, let's take your bicep, the upper arm, right? The function of this muscle is to flex the elbow. What is elbow flexion? The lower arm moves towards the shoulder. This is elbow flexion. If I open that joint up, this is elbow extension. It works the tricep, the other side. So flexion, extension. So the bicep shortens, it flexes the elbow. That is the purpose of the bicep, is to bring the elbow, the ulnar radius, towards the humerus, towards the shoulder joint. All right? It's a very simple function. Then what I should do, once I know how that joint functions and that muscle functions, is to do an exercise that works it through that movement pattern. How do I do that? A simple dumbbell or barbell curl will do that. Getting on a machine and doing a barbell curl will do that. I don't need to come up with any sort of sophisticated, over-the-top, confusing movement patterns that somehow seem related to the fact that I'm a runner. When you're running, your arms are kind of moving in this fashion, right? So maybe I should hold a dumbbell and sort of move dumbbells like this as I'm walking through the gym. Again, that's the mindset of becoming functionally fit. It has no scientific basis. In fact, when you look at the studies that look at sport-specific training, people that do sport-specific training do worse. They don't do better. What would be a good example here? Any baseball fans here? How long have you seen baseball players put a donut on the end of the bat and swing it? And now that's supposed to do what? It's supposed to improve their bat speed at the plate, right? Loosen them up, increase bat speed. It's supposed to improve performance as they're batting. Well, what happens when I put a weight to a movement and practice that movement. Do you move faster or slower? If you put, anyone know how heavy the donuts are? Is it 2, 3, 4 pounds? I don't know. A couple pounds. So if you swing a bat at regular speed and then you put a 3-pound donut on it, are you speeding up or are you slowing down? You're actually slowing down. So you're practicing how to move the bat slower is what you're doing. This is called specificity of movement. So what we know about this process is this is called negative transfer. What you're basically doing is learning how to swing a bat slowly. The same thing happens in any movement pattern. It happens with a golf club. Titleist has studied this. If you give a golfer a heavier golf club to try to help them get faster with their swinging, and then you put them back to a regular club, they swing significantly slower with the regular club because they're training the neuromuscular system to move slowly. So the essence here is that we're confusing the motor pathways here. If you are a professional baseball player and you're able to hit a fastball, there's one motor pathway that works for that activity. One motor pathway, not 2, not 3. Anytime you do that same activity differently at a slower speed, you're in essence detraining, but we call it negative transfer. So you're training other motor pathways and you're getting less effective at that activity. So donuts translate into 0 results. In fact, they make the batter worse. Heavy golf clubs do the same thing. And the same is true for anything. So if you're a runner and you said, gosh, I need to have ankle weights on when I'm walking all day because I want to work my legs. That's not going to make you a faster runner. It has nothing to do with your running speed. In fact, it would contribute to, again, less effective running. So be anatomically specific here. What's the function of the muscle? Elbow flexion. Flex the elbow with a resistance, dumbbell, barbell, band, body weight, machine, whatever it is, to a high level of fatigue, you're done. You then go practice what you want to go do under those exact circumstances. You guys want to be better runners, right? What's the only way to be a better runner? The only way to be a better runner is to practice running exactly the way you do it in training and in the race. On race day, you're not going to run differently, are you? You're not going to run with sandbags on your shoulders, are you? Of course not. So you need to run the way you're going to do it in competition. That's the only way to become a faster runner. Everything else is supplemental to that. So the strength workout should be different and unrelated to the running. We should train the quadriceps, the hamstrings, hips. They all have functions in lower body locomotion. And then go use that muscle and that force production running, not doing anything else, but go run the way I need to run to do well, enjoy the race, and maybe win a race sometimes. So don't confuse strength training with sport-specific movements. It is a gargantuan mistake that's been happening for decades, and it still happens on the professional level. You guys, it's not like there's something wrong with us here tonight. This happens with professionals, and it happens with Olympians, and so on. So if you know anything about this, here's what the take-home message. Strength is general, the application of strength is specific. If you want to do sport-specific training, you think it's useful, you should do specific training for every movement pattern in your life, right? Strength is general, the application is specific. You don't need to overthink this. Work their joints and muscles through their anatomical, functional movement patterns, and then go enjoy life doing 60 billion other things and use that strength, okay? Big mistake today in training circles.